And a very good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. I'm hoping this is all working fine. I'm just going to wiggle my light around here as well because I'm getting a nasty shadow across my face. Although that's a good thing sometimes. Welcome to episode 6 of the Pro Synth Network live show. It is Sunday, May 10th. We are a little bit late, I'm afraid. But we'll make up for that. We always run over anyway and give you your value for money. So we're all here, as you can see. Myself, Ben, Cryss, and we have another special guest with us this week, Mr. Marc Barnes. We'll come on to Marc very shortly. Actually, let's do that now because he is our guest, and it does make it's polite to come to Marc first. So, welcome, Marc. Welcome to the show.
How are you doing, guys? Great to be here. Great to see you again. Great to see you again, Cryss. Jamie's show with a few months ago. It's great to finally meet you guys, sort of virtually in person.
Likewise. It's a pleasure to have you. So just.
Hold on a second. We got no video.
Oh.
Yeah, it's showing the Pro Synth screen.
Yeah, sorry, that's my mistake. Hopefully, Marc's on there now.
Yeah, it's me on now. I've got it now. I've got it on my phone.
Excellent. All right, then, Marc. So thankfully, we've got some video now as well as the audio. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What it is that you do.
Sorry, just some echo. We got some echo. Let's get this sorted first. Who is echoing?
Is it me?
Is it everyone? How is that? Any better?
1 2 1 2 2 1 2.
Sorry, I think it was me. I've got to on my phone to see chat room. I think that should be now. Sounds off.
Says I'm going also.
Terrible echo on Cryss too. Okay. This is the thing now because we're there is a delay.
Is it those NDI sources?
And Ben. Yeah, so it looks like everybody's echoing except for you, Robbie.
So that means that I'm feeding something into the mix, which I guess, let's see. Right. The only way we can tell is if Marc is still echoing. It's all the guests echoing.
Right. Just gonna check now. Just now.
Hang on. There we go. I think that might have sorted it.
Hello.
You're not helping. Right. So let's see. Echo is gone. Yay.
Good stuff.
Lovely stuff.
Right. Just to explain to all our lovely to all our viewers. So the software that we used, and I've now got people pinging me. Thanks, Simon. The software that we used just crapped out about half an hour ago and just flipped everybody's settings. So Ben's settings were for Cryss, and Cryss' settings were for Ben. Marc's settings were all over the shop, and who knows? But Simon's now pinging me. You might hear that in the background. All okay now, so fingers crossed we can do a show. Let's go back to our guest, Marc Barnes. Marc, right now, without all the echo, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, your involvement with music technology and the music industry as a whole?
Okay, so as a whole, as you can hear from my voice, I live in sunny Scotland. I'm very Scottish, and I play in a band here called Angel Star, and that's where my YouTube channel name comes from, Angel Star Scotland.
Gotcha.
Obviously, I'm not playing any gigs just now, so it's more time in the studio, which I enjoy as well. So I started sort of getting into electronics and music around about 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had, since I was since about 95 or something like that, I've always had a home recording studio of some sort. And a few years ago, I decided to get back into hardware synths and concentrate on sound design. And I'm really enjoying it, to be honest.
Excellent.
Especially during this lockdown, because there's a time to actually just sit and concentrate on one thing, and there's no big rush to do anything. It's like there's not a case of, oh, I need to learn this song before the gig on Saturday night, and this needs to be done. I can work at my own pace, and it's quite nice. So it is.
Excellent. No, that's great. Because I've been noticing you've been doing a lot of wave state sound design videos and throwing those up onto YouTube, which are great. Obviously, if you're a wave state user, these are really beneficial. How are you finding that particular piece of gear?
I'll be honest with you. It took me 2 to 3 weeks to get my head round the complexity of it. It's a very complex synth, and it was sort of overwhelming at first, Robbie.
Yeah.
But now I feel that sorry. Now I feel that I'm really into it, and I'm really enjoying it. It takes time to sound design on it. It's not one of those synths that you can throw together a good patch in 5 minutes. You really need to work on it.
Sure.
But I feel now that I'm getting there. I'm trying to at least program one patch every day. So I get up in the morning and I do whatever I need to do. Then the first thing I do is I try and program a patch for the wave state just now.
Cool.
And I'm trying to just sort of build it up. I've released 2 banks that I sell so far. And I'm working on a 3rd bank just now. And it's one of these things. And then after I do my patch each day, it's a bit of music. I've got quite a lot of music projects in the go just now, from all different things, from my daughter wanting to do vocals in my music, which is really nice. Actually, and I've got a friend who's recreating an 80s track, and I'm working on that just now, and just all different things. And obviously my wife with her singing as well. She's got loads of ideas of things to do over the lockdown.
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go into a bit more depth about your sound design and your live performances as well a little bit later on. But thanks for that. Brilliant to have you on the show.
It's great to be here.
Excellent. And let's go and say hello to Cryss, who is over in sunny California. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing all right. Just got a nice, easy morning, and I had taken some of my synthesizers out. I had to do some photography and some little video clips, so I did it on the back patio, and was just sitting playing my Matriarch this morning, repatching it up.
Cool.
So, and this is a great way to keep going the day going.
And is it nice and warm and sunny over there in California at the moment?
It's been kind of hot here, so.
Which whereabouts in California? Obviously, don't give us your street address, but are you north, south?
Southern California.
Okay,
like,
sort of LA.
Generally, like Los Angeles is. That's kind of the big area.
Yeah. Cool, excellent stuff. Great to have you back, and let's go over to the big boss man, Mr. Ben Simpson of Electro 80s. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Is it
good.
windy?
It's awful.
Isn't
it's
it?
grey weather. It's completely stopped work on the summer house.
Yeah.
Had to stop. Well, I kind of decided to do a bit of work in my slippers on it. And stood on a nail, which hasn't done me any good. It's kind of gone into my foot and caused a bit of damage. But
oh, nasty. I went out yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? My wife, she's the gardener. I don't do the gardening. It's against my religion. And she had created a whole pile of old wood and leaves and stuff to burn in the incinerator that looks like a garbage can thing. And I went downstairs and I was messing around with that in my slippers, as you do. And I got these big fire gloves, and they're big fire retardant gloves for barbecuing and stuff. And so you can touch hot coals and it's absolutely fine. And I'm throwing this stuff in, and I lift the lid off, and there was a gust of wind and the flames just shot out, and I looked at my arm and it was all just lots of black little bits of burnt hair. So I've now got a very smooth arm. But it didn't burn me, thankfully. So yeah, I'm not the best when it comes to handiwork like that. Give me a screwdriver and a soldering iron and a bit of a lamp and stuff, and I'm fine. But big meaty things like that, not my stuff. Anyway, so here we are, all four of us, and hopefully everyone that's a regular viewer here will know that we've had trouble with things resizing. so four 30 plus 40 plus year old men talking about things not being the right size. It's probably not good, but hopefully we figured out this whole video thing. So despite our teething issues to start with, fingers crossed we will have a resizing free show, and I won't have to keep restretching everything, which is a pain in the backside. Anyway, so let's do some topics, shall we? And the first one that we're going to go to is probably, what can you say? It's very sad news. Kraftwerk's Florian Schneider passed away. Actually passed away last week, but they only announced it this week. And I had my friend in Berlin send me a message saying, prepare yourself, there's some bad news coming about Florian Schneider. And I thought, uh-oh. And I said, are you sure? Because I can't find anything online. He said, no, absolutely. I spoke to his manager and he's confirmed it. I said, oh, right. Oh, shit. Okay. So founding member, classically trained musician, and just one of the most influential musicians in one of the most influential bands, not just for electronic music, but for music overall. Very sad to lose him. Anybody got any thoughts on Florian's passing?
I've always loved Kraftwerk, and when I think of those seminal moments that there's been, it's like he was a big part of that, wasn't it? It was always him and Ralph, and I don't know. It's just a massive loss. I mean, I don't mean this in any negative way. He hadn't done any music for a while.
No.
But he's a great man and made a great contribution to modern music, and it's going to be it's not going to be the same without him.
No, that's very true. Mark, were Kraftwerk a big influence on you?
Yeah, well, probably a little before my time, but the sort of message that I would like to send out to people today regarding this is, whether you're a Kraftwerk fan or not, if you do electronic music, you are influenced by Kraftwerk, whether you realise it or not, because they really set down all the foundations of everything that we do today. So it's a massive loss, and huge respect to the man.
Yeah, absolutely. He was. Kraftwerk. For me personally, I remember them in the 70s. Growing up as a young boy, and you hear this stuff, and you see them, because there's that classic Tomorrow's World clip that everyone must have been sharing around the last few days. Where you have the posh English reporter talking about these crazy Germans who are making drums out of tinfoil and sticks on wires and stuff, and I kind of viewed them slightly maybe as a novelty act as a young kid. And then I think for most people of our age, when we heard the model, that was just, that's cool, because it's not only is it different and very minimalist and stuff, but it had a very big pop sensibility, and it was just had a great video that went with it, and then these mysterious Germans, and I think once you've got that in to the catalogue, that's when I started discovering things like Trans-Europe Express and Autobahn, which I still think is just an absolute classic. Cryss, were you massively influenced by Kraftwerk, or have any memories or kind of tales to tell based on their music?
I'm the least familiar out of all of us here today, and when during that era I was listening to other things, so I was in the rock world. but having kind of come into it and just maybe as a different perspective, because I didn't discover them. I mean, I knew who they were, but I hadn't really ever listened to them. So when I was, really getting into synthesis, and like the bands that people talk about when you're trying to figure out, like, because I've heard a lot of rock stuff with synth, but where do the guys that just really are in synthesizer go to? And so it was always one of the first names to come up, like Kraftwerk, Jean-Michel Jarre, Tangerine Dream. Sasquatch has already got it there, and those band, Gary Newman, and so those have been enjoyable to check out. I certainly don't know their catalog, but one of the things that impresses me about Kraftwerk, I mean, innovators, but they also had that kind of artistic element to it. Like, they're visually recognizable. As soon as you see a picture of them, you're like, oh, no, that's Kraftwerk. Yeah. It's not some random band. Like, they had a complete image, a complete sound.
Yeah. No, I get that totally. It's they weren't just musicians; they were artists because it was visual. There was just the whole persona as well of the band was very unique. The thing I always liked about Florian was that they'd be stood there doing this serious stuff, and then he would just turn his head and face down the barrel of the camera and just give that little smile, and it was just like you weren't quite sure whether they wanted to play with you or whether they wanted to murder you, but they were making some great music at the time. And some of the stuff, and then when you get to hear the catalog and you go through this stuff and you listen really closely, you hear not only the influences that other bands took from them, but also the samples. I mean, the amount of samples. If it wasn't for Kraftwerk, there were samples in New Order's Blue Monday from, I can't remember which album it's from. Was it Trans Europe Express? It was a track on there, and that kind of choir type sound that just is like consistent through the song. That's sampled from Kraftwerk, and it's the influence is just massive. But yeah, really, really sad news all round. The other thing is with Kraftwerk is that a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I saw them a couple of years ago." Now, what you saw was like one member of Kraftwerk, a couple of accountants, and the guy that does the video wall at the back, and that's really all they are now, which is a real shame. And I wouldn't really want to go and see that version of the band myself.
Yeah, I got that.
Anyway, that's the sad news. And of course, we also lost Dave Greenfield, who was the keyboard player in the Stranglers. And again, I'm not entirely sure how familiar you are with the Stranglers, Cryss, over there in the States, but certainly over here in the UK, they were a kind of a seminal band that transcended or had a foot in more than just, a lot of people saw them as a punk band, but they were also like a prog band and a soft rock band and all sorts of things. They never you couldn't pigeonhole them. I think all the factions tried to take them as their own, but with Dave Greenfield's playing, he was very, certainly a lot of prog influence in there. But that was another sad one. Anybody got any tales or influences from people like Dave?
Dave, massive influence on me. I'm nowhere near as good as him, but it was things like No More Heroes. I thought, hang on, there's other ways of using synths and keyboards in music. I hadn't really heard of the Doors and things like that then. The Stranglers was kind of my gateway into things like the Doors. I went and investigated them afterwards, but when I heard like No More Heroes, it was just like, wow, this guy is like, he's like bionic or something. He's just, and when you see him live, he's like that all night, near enough, isn't he? He was. His lines were just like, it was like he was swimming. It just never stopped, but never sounded too much either.
No, that's right.
It was always a perfectly suitable keyboard line, even though it was really busy. He must have, God, I bet he could have lifted some weight in with those arms. He must have been, must have been like Popeye.
But one of the things,
and then it was like, sorry, then it was like the subtlety of something like Golden Brown that came out. That was like, wow. And actually like considered using an harpsichord sound for the first time after that. It's.
I think a lot of people forget how different that was when you heard. If you were used to hearing songs like Peaches and No More Heroes and all of that kind of stuff, and then they come up with this thing called Golden Brown, which is all harpsichord and it's kind of slightly jazz drumming, and it's just, it was so out there, but it was so great. This is one thing that surprised me. There's one of the pictures that was doing the rounds because it's on Wikipedia. So this is Dave in his later years, probably 2012, so about 8 years ago, playing 3 Yamaha CS1Xs. Not the sort of keyboard you see one of, let alone 3 of, in a live performance by a world famous rock band. But hey, there you go. Very strange. Do like my CS1X. I had one of those and I still regret selling it, but never mind. I had somebody contact me completely out of the blue. I sampled all my CS1X sounds before I sold it, and I mentioned it about 10 years ago on some bizarre internet forum, and they emailed me out of the blue and said, have you still got those samples? We'd love them. And I had to dig through all my backups, but yeah, there they were. All there. So you never know, you might hear somebody doing something with that soon. Right, okay, well that's all the sad stuff out of the way. Let's move on to our next topic.
Just a mention for Little Richard as well.
Oh, of course,
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely, one of the originals.
Yep, very. Original and strange, but I guess when you're that good, you can do.
There's a guy that wasn't just a musician; he was the full package entertainer and all.
And he broke down doors in not just musically but artistically and culturally. It's
It wasn't like his past didn't involve him being trans, in being something like a preacher. And something else bizarre as well. Like he was in the CIA or something bizarre like that. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of mythology, and I know I've certainly read that he once said that he was omnisexual, which meant he liked boys and girls alike. And then a few years later, renounced all of that, and said homosexuality is a sin and all this kind of stuff. So there was definitely a lot of conflict going on in there. Which, There you go.
Yeah, I've actually, I take it obviously that's Little Richard you're talking about. Yeah, I've got a story about that because years ago, back in the 60s, my dad was a manager in the Top 10 club in Hamburg.
Oh yeah,
and Little Richard was booked to come over, and he brought someone with him, but the boy was sort of underaged. Ooh. And he basically he wasn't allowed to bring him in to the club or anything. So basically he just left them at the port kind of thing.
Wow.
And the boy had to sort of work out how he was going to get back to the US himself, kind of thing.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it was a different time, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a different time. Yeah, totally different time.
What I really appreciated is some of the earlier African American musicians, and some of those people still being around for quite a while that I'm going to see in concert. Like Chuck Berry, B.B. King, Buddy Guy, and being able to see the musicians that really influence the musicians that I love. So, getting into 60s British rockers, guys like Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and some American ones like Jimi Hendrix. But then the guys that really got them going and that they've still been making music. And it's kind of a funny thing to think that rock and roll has grown old. But these guys, 70s, 80s, I can't remember how old But McCartney is late 70s now?
He must be 79 or 80. Yeah, because I think he was born. Lennon was 1940, and I think McCartney was either 40 or 41 or something. So he's got to be knocking on the door of 80 and still kicking it.
Yeah, but wow, what a rich addition to our culture and our musical culture. I'm thinking about bands like Kraftwerk as well. I mean, how they have their sound and their influence has carried on in other musicians. It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess that's the way of life, isn't it? We're going to lose our heroes at some point. And I suppose in a good to look on the slightly brighter thing, it's good if we outlive these people, because they're obviously considerably older than us. But standing on the shoulders of giants, absolutely. So there you go. Sad to lose some people, but I guess in these days, I'm surprised we haven't lost more yet. Who knows? Right, let's move on to our next topic, which is slightly brighter and more cheerful. Spitfire Audio, BBC Symphony Orchestra. So they announced this week that they are expanding the reach of the Symphony Orchestra package that they launched last year. I think around October, November time, and they've been teasing this a little while. This is the announcement that they are bringing in 2 new versions of the BBC SO package, and the first one is called Discover, and it's called the Universal Starting Point, and it's £49, €49, $49, or free if you fill in a rather extensive but not very intrusive survey. So they're just asking about your musical abilities, your musical skills, and how you were going to use this. And I thought, well, I'll get this for my son, because he's about to start a music tech course at high school, so I'll fill that all in about him. So he's now got that. Then the next
well, let me ask you about that. So this has been talked about, you've talked about it, and I've had such a busy week that I wanted to go and watch some of their YouTube videos on it. I did fill out the survey, so I got that done, but I hadn't had any more time. Robbie, can you tell us, and maybe anybody else that is unfamiliar with it, really basically, like, what is this just something like sample tape, or the IK Philharmonic, or does it have AI type stuff involved with it? How does it work?
Sure. So BBC Symphony Orchestra, the BBC Symphony Orchestra as it exists today, is probably regarded as one of the best orchestras in the world, and they record, or used to record, at a studio in London called Maida Vale, which is owned by the BBC. And the Maida Vale studio has a huge history. It actually started off as a roller skating rink or an ice rink back in the 30s, and then it was disused for a while, and the BBC were looking for some space, and they found this place with great acoustics and great, nice big areas that they could put in, orchestras to record, and it became, one of the greatest recording studios out there, and became the home of the BBC SO. And then Spitfire go in over the last sort of 2 or 3 years and sampled them meticulously, and the depth of sampling here is there's over 1 million individual samples in this package alone. The professional package is just under 600 gig. The core package that they've just announced is 22 gig, and the Discover package is about 200 megabytes. But the detail, the multiple microphone setups, multiple the word has completely gone out of my head. Playing styles, basically. Articulations. So I've got this word beginning with I in my head, and I don't know why, and I thought that's not right. Let me see, actually, if I can bring up. So I'm going to do this, and then it's going to completely make me blind in terms of... so tell me if you can see my Logic screen. I'll need the viewers and the rest of the people in the chat room to confirm this. Actually, so hopefully you can see my Logic screen here. and I'm just going to bring up the plugin, which is now showing me an error because I've been messing around with the audio cards. Let's see if we can get an image somewhere. This makes great viewing, this, doesn't it? I don't know. Let's skip that because I can't see what I'm doing. I can't see what's going out. So let's go back to multi-guest. Right. Okay. So what they've done is they've come up with a custom plugin. So a lot of their stuff used to use Contact, but this is a custom plugin that very quickly allows you to switch between all of those articulations. And there's 20 odd articulations per instrument group, and then you've got all the miking combinations. You've got the reverb of the room has been recorded. There's massive room mics all over the place, and it's just the ability to get the sound of the BBC Symphony Orchestra in a package that you can completely manage. And if you want something that's closely mic'd or you want some big ambience, it's just everything is there, and it's so quick and easy to do, and everything can be mapped and key switched, and it's just a real beautiful thing to play. And also the scripting is fantastic, where you get some orchestral libraries and you have to choose an articulation, and then you have to choose other things to get certain things. It's almost like it's an intelligent plugin that knows what you're playing from what you're pressing and which notes you're going from and to, and it will give you the appropriate articulation and performance based on the velocity and the sensitivity of the aftertouch. And it's just so detailed. But they've now made this incredibly accessible to everyone, because the full package, the professional, it normally retails at $899, and say it's a 600 gigabyte download. That's now down to $679. This new core package, which gives you all the instruments and most of the articulations, but only a stereo mix out, is normally $399, is currently $299, and then Discover, which is a very light version. But I was playing around with this the other day, and it's still, you only get like 4 articulations, but it's still an incredibly capable package, and it's only £49 or free if you fill in the survey. And if you fill in the survey, you get your package in 14 days. That's the catch. But it really, the one thing that's really impressed me about the BBC SO, the whole thing, and I'll come to this mode switching in a minute, is this thing called the page. And I'm just going to open that in a, let's do this here. So what the page does is bring a community together of users, and I think the principle that Spitfire want to have here is that they want to have an orchestral library that everyone can use as a baseline, that they can get the best sounds, but also on a budget and on the move. So and everything is just so beautifully laid out. You've got all these resources, so you've got templates for all of the versions. You've got some cracking wallpapers there as well. You've got demos and videos. There's a forum. If you hashtag one orchestra at the end of your performance that you've put on here, you'll get lots of people coming to see what you've been doing. So it's a real big community, and that's really, I think it's really nice to see from a sample library developer that they're going beyond just delivering you a package of sounds, but they're giving you a platform and a community to get involved with, which I think is just superb. But yeah, I mean, I could wax lyrical about this all day long, because I'm not a great player, but this just sounds so good. There's the comparison. So 33 instruments in Discover, 42 in Core, 56 in Professional, and then you can see how the different techniques, the different articulations, jumps from just 47 in total in Discover right up to 435 in Pro, and of course there's round robins as well, which in the professional version you can really hear, that this sounds so authentic. 20 signals, output signals in professional, just the one stereo mix in the other two, and then dynamic layers and legatos, and you can see the difference in sizes just there. And all of this is covered by mode switching, which means that if Ben's got the Discover version, and maybe Cryss has got the Core version, and I've got the Pro version, we can all compose something in every single version. And if Ben sends his to me, I can open it up as in Discover format, but I can also open it up in Pro format, and it will automatically assign all the best samples, and expand it automatically. There's no remapping that has to be done. It's just I'm going to stop now because I'm just sucking the proverbial what. I just love it, and they should sponsor me. Guys, Mark, I'm going to come to you first. Do you use orchestral libraries? If you do, what do you think of this? Or is this?
I think I used to use orchestral libraries quite a lot a few years ago, and I've my music's moved towards being more synth driven and out the box. About 3-4 years ago, pretty much all the music I was doing was in the box, and these kind of things were brilliant for me. And I think it sounds absolutely excellent, this Spitfire Orchestra library, from what I've heard. I've went and done the survey, so I'll be getting my free version of Discover in 14 days. For where I am with my music just now, it's not something I'll be investing £600 on, to be honest with you. But I can totally see why, to some people who are working in television music or film music or doing music for commercials or whatever, I totally see why somebody in that situation would totally jump at buying that. It sounds great. And I personally, I love orchestral music, but it's just I've just sort of became more synth driven in the past couple of years, and I'm like, do you know, if I spend £680 in that could be a synth.
Yeah, that's true. It's absolutely
That's just where I am just now. But I mean, that's not to say in the future it's certainly something I would maybe seriously look at.
I know I was Torsten asked in the chat room, and I know he sent me a message earlier today. Unfortunately, I was a little bit too busy to answer, but he was asking whether how it compared to other orchestral sample libraries out there, and I don't have a huge amount. I mean, I've got some really old ones from some old Fairlight ones, which are really quite good, and I've got some for the Akai, and I've got the Miroslav stuff from IK Multimedia, and I think somewhere I had Peter Seidlercheck stuff, but I haven't used that for ages. But the one thing I did do when BBC came out, and I compared it with some of those, and I used to think some of those were really, really good, solid libraries. It's the detail, it's the authenticity of this BBC stuff, that nothing sounds exactly the same every time you play it with.
Absolutely.
It's those round robins, I think, which takes up a huge amount of space. But my God,
that's the thing. And see what you're saying, the articulations, the different articulations for different sections of your music. That's really, I mean, obviously, I'm saying the music I'm doing in the studio is very synth driven just now, but my other job when the band's gigging, a lot of it is, for me, is recreating real sounds as best as I can with electronics, and it's not just the sound; it's actually the articulations and the way it's played,
the performances. I think that's what they've really captured with this, is the actual performance, which is just stunning. Cryss, let's come to you, sir. Orchestral libraries, your thing?
So I don't do anything that's like fully scored out. You just heard some stuff that Ben had did, and it sounded really good. But I'll rely on some smaller sections, like I'll do like a cello quartet or something like that, and put it into a song. But you know, definitely hearing the difference between what just an average sample can do, and when you feel like you're listening to the bow like gliding and the friction across the string from a really good sound source, a sample. It's a really enjoyable thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really changed in the last, say, I don't know, 10, 15 years maybe, is the scripting behind such libraries such as this. So back in my day, you bought a CD that had an orchestral library on it, maybe as 2 or 3 CDs with different bits on, and they'd sample different velocities and maybe a few different mic positions, but they hadn't really gone into that detail, the round robins and everything else that gives you this, gives you the life. Because if you play a note on an orchestral library, it's the same note that's being played. It sounds good, but then it just doesn't sound authentic. And it's when you hear something like this, the authenticity is the thing that I think that sets this apart from everything else that I've ever played with. I'm sure there's other great orchestral libraries out there. I was very fortunate to get hold of this, and it's just blown me away from day one. And then to see what they've done with this is it's just it's that sense of collaboration, the sense of community that's really blown me away. Ben, I know that you were quite excited about this because this kind of ties in with something that you've been doing. So you've ordered your copy of Discover. How do you see yourself using this?
I've got it.
Oh, you've
I've got it.
Excellent.
I've got it, and I've been using it all day. And I've not come out of this room all day. I've just been in here, and it has absolutely blown me away. Mm-hmm. I paid the 49 quid for it because I couldn't wait. I just needed it. I needed it there and then. Because, as well, as you know, I'm working on that soundtrack. And so I think it was, it might have been, as Yo Ed said in the chat room, how does it compare to GM? That's a hilarious question. But it's funny you should ask that, because I've been like trying to cobble together this orchestra from, I've got the sample libraries that Robbie was on about earlier. I've got patches in like the Integra 7 that sound authentic on their own. I've got patches in the Motif that sound authentic. The cellos in the Motif are really good. The harp on the Integra is really good. But when you put them together, it is a little bit like that, almost a posher version of that GM sound. Yeah, it's still synthesis trying to be real things. And what I love about this, even the Discover, is that it's just laid out in front of you in the shape of the orchestra. Yeah. And when you want violins, you click where the violins are. Yeah. And then you can pick your articulation.
It is such an intuitive interface, isn't it? Oh.
Yeah, but they're panned in the right place as well.
Yep.
So when everybody starts playing, it fills without you doing anything. So I've literally got all those parts that I had earlier and copied them down to a new track and assigned one of the Discover sounds to them, the appropriate one. Yeah. And I had to do a little bit of transposing up and down, but that was it. And it's just literally where it was. If you were playing a PlayStation game from 1998, my orchestra sounded like that. Yeah. And then it just went boom, and it became cinematic. Yeah. Off of a £49 plugin.
I know, it's crazy. And the thing you say about that panning and that positioning, you notice it with Discover. You have it's fixed. So when you click on this, it's coming from the appropriate place in the orchestra. The thing when you start going up to, can't remember if it's in Core. I haven't played with that too much, but it's certainly in Pro. If you want your if you want to hear your violas, which tend to sit on the right as you're looking at the stage, but you want to hear what they sound like from over in the back left-hand corner, then you just bring those levels up and you keep everything else down. And you can just, the way you can fine-tune and balance everything is just stunning. And it really just does breathe life into this library. It's not just a set of sounds that all sound, very nice but pretty much the same. It's like when I go for sample libraries of pianos or any kind of piano instrument. Not that I have much of a need for one anymore, but I always look for libraries that have the mechanical sounds as samples in there as well. The sound of the mechanism making the clunk when you press the pedal. If I don't hear the pedal mechanism without touching the notes, then I won't touch that library because it doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah, and the other thing is that with those separately recorded, the round robin on the same note ends up becoming like an analog synthesizer where every press of a key is not the same.
Yeah.
And so even though you're playing the same chord twice, maybe you have a dynamic that changes. It's not something that is immediately recognizable, like, oh, this is a different sample or something, or this is a different key press, a phase is different. But it's that unconscious sort of life that sounds have.
Yeah.
Which it does, very much resemble, a real orchestra playing and something like an analog synth.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I used to mess around on the school piano. We were lucky; we had a really nice big grand. I forget which make it was. I think it might have been a Kawai. And I used to, I'm not very good, but I used to play this stuff, and it sounded fantastic. But there was always something missing when I tried to play that on a synthesizer or a sampler or something. It missed that stuff, and it was only when I got into sampling from a kind of professional perspective that my mentor said to me, right, we've done the note samples, now we've got to do the note off samples. And I was like, what do you mean note off samples? For every key, we're going to sample the mechanics of this, so what happens when you release the key and we get this, this mechanical sound, and we're going to do that for every key, and it's going to be different for every key because it sounds different over here than it does over there. And I was like, wow, I thought we'd finish when we were just doing the notes, but no, we've got to do the mechanics as well. And so I really appreciate that kind of that depth and this, when you see some of the demos on there, I mean, some people have said that it's a typical Spitfire audio demo that lasts about 2 hours. They make movies from their demonstrations. It's
good watch though.
Yeah, absolutely,
very informative.
Yeah, absolutely. And also,
I wonder how much
sure.
difference it make to like younger musicians. I'm just thinking, even though like I didn't grow up in the '60s, I was born in the '70s. But listening to stuff like the Beatles or Led Zeppelin, where you can hear Ringo's kick pedal squeaking or something. And you have, just as you were saying, Robbie, where those unintended noises become part of the realism of the sound versus something that's just completely made in the box and it's quantized and all that kind of stuff. And you lose those sort of life-giving elements to it. I wonder if even some of the younger musicians these days would pick up on that or not. I mean, maybe they're just speculating.
Well, actually, I was going to bring up, because I can't even remember what library it was, but I had a very early library where it had the pedal noise on the piano. So when you played the sustain, it made a clunk like you were pressing down the pedal in a real piano. And I thought this was wonderful. Right, I thought, that's great. Just it's so like the real thing, and sent the track to the customer who was paying me for it, and he's like, "What on earth is that noise?" And I'm like, it's sounding real. It's the noise of the sustain. Get that off.
It actually reminds me of when we were in the studio back in 1987. And we were recording a real bass. And I remember the bass player at the time, we were trying to get the bass sound so it had no fret noise, no finger noise, no sliding down the screens. And it was the other day I was trying to recreate a real bass, and I'm there turning all these things up. You know, I want fret noise on maximum, I want string screech on maximum. It's so bizarre how it's changed. Like 1987, everything was to sound as clinical and perfect as it could. And now it's like, we want all that.
Yeah.
Don't we? We want to capture everything because that's what gives it soul, really.
Well, that's the thing. Ben, what happened was during the 90s, everything became that clean and perfect sound, and then people finally realised, do you know what? Clean and perfect's boring.
Yeah,
we're not getting the character now. All everybody's doing, every plug-in you get is trying to recreate the character of the real thing.
Yeah. There's one of them, I think it's one of the Arturia ones, it's got main tom on as when you turn it on. I think it's the Vox organ or something.
Yeah.
It's buzzing. And straight away I turn that off every time. Like, get away. I've spent a fortune on power conditioners. I don't want that.
I do that with my UAD tape sim plugins. So the first thing I always do is turn off the tape noise. I'm like, we want the things good about tape, the warmth and things, not the noise.
Yeah.
I like the instruments that give you the control, a separate control over those things. So you can have, you can balance the sound and the mechanics or the fuzz. And of course, in the world of synths, we've got the things like the Juno chorus with its its noise. That if the noise isn't there, people complain. So we get used to certain things.
Yeah, on the System 8, they've got the knob for the chorus noise.
Oh, cool.
That's the one parameter you gave me to play with on it. But it's like you said, you can choose to have it or not. Or, I've had tons of old analog delays, and they're noisy as heck. And when you hear those repeats coming back, and they're just like hissy, and it used to bother me for a bit, but there is something kind of comforting about those idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
I do enjoy a more modern perspective. Like, I don't want to choose whether I want that or not.
So that's BBC Symphony Orchestra, which is available now in the 3 different formats: Discover, Core, and Pro. And Torsten was actually asking about the upgrade path. So again, this is another simple path that Spitfire put into place. If you want to upgrade from one to another, you just pay the difference in the base price. So the base price of Discover is $49, and the base price of Core is now $299. Then you would just pay another $250, and that's it. You then get up there. So there's no messing around. It's just simple, straightforward. And again, if you want to go from Core to Pro, $299 to $679. So do the math. I can't do it this time of night. Haven't had any wine. So, but it's simple and straightforward. And if you buy one, you just got to bump up the rest to get to the next level. Simple as that. So there you go, BBC Symphony Orchestra. Go check it out if you want a copy of Discover. It is free of charge right now. So all you need to do is go to spitfireaudio.com, go to the BBC SO page, and then you can either pay, as Ben has done, £49 to get it straight away, or you click on the free option and you fill out a survey. So I did that with my son. A, to get him the plugin, and B, so that I could actually see what the survey was all about. And it's totally non-intrusive. It's just they just want to know how you use your plugins, how what is your experience of orchestral stuff in the past, what are your musical abilities, what are your aspirations, very useful stuff.
Yesterday, and it takes 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's an easy survey to do, so
and it's an interesting one, because the questions are genuinely about you and your music. So, small price to pay for getting that. I'm just blown away by it.
There was one question on the survey though. It said, "What was the first ever sample library you got?" Yeah. And I'm like. It was still in CDs at that time. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it. I went into the music shop in Glasgow and I picked up my first sample CD, and I'm like, I can nowhere remember the name of it. I was like, I actually put that as an answer they accepted it.
Well, yeah, I think it's just free text, that one, but yeah, it's good. So actually, Ben, I was going to come back to you. So you're talking about how you've implemented this and stuff you've got so far. You sent me and Cryss earlier this week a draft of this score that you've been working on, that you've been talking about for a while now. Am I allowed to show this?
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit of it. Yeah.
Let's see. So,
Ben, I've not heard that. I'd love to hear it.
All right. Yeah. Go on.
So, hopefully this will all work. Ben has been doing a score for a short movie, and he sent us this link. So I'm just going to bring this up here. Hopefully, we'll get some audio.
Broadcasts. What? Your house is really nice.
Not entirely sure how much of that or how good you can hear that. Is that coming through okay?
I could hear it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm echoing again.
Oh yeah, I can hear the echo.
That's right. Hopefully I've got rid of that. So let's get back here. So yeah, we still haven't quite got the audio issues sorted in that regard. But anyway, really good. Really enjoyed it. Your score fits the fits the images on screen really, really well. So just tell us a little bit about the process behind you doing this. I mean, I've not done film, score to picture or anything like that before. Is this something that's fairly simple for you to do? How do you go about it? What's the process?
I think like a lot of people have always said to me, like your music sounds like cinematic. It's got like a cinematic feel to it anyway. So I thought, well, I'd like to get into that. So I got in touch with a filmmaking forum, and I just offered like what my services on there really, and
you basically hoard yourself out. That's what it was.
Yeah, because I thought I need a portfolio. That's the thing. No, and the first film I did, it was okay, but I hadn't properly got into the swing of it there, I don't think. I wish I could do it again. But like this one, even though when I first watched the visuals with no music at all, I thought, this is a bit more challenging than the other one. It's quite, the film's quite on one level, up until you get to the end. And so to try and keep that interesting, I had to, I don't know, think of ways of varying the music, but without changing what was going on in the scene. Because I think it's quite possible to do that. If you play something like, that film, that intro sequence could be quite sinister as well.
Yeah. But
like decided to go with a real kind of over the top happy tune. It's like too happy in a way. And so, yeah, that's how all I do. I just get the video in there, time code lock it, and basically play a piano part all the way through it. That's when I'm happy with like the dynamics of that. I start looking at where I can build it up from there. Cool. And with this Discover package today, that was making me write new parts because I was realizing, hang on, I haven't got any rhythmic brass here. I could pick it up there with that, so I was writing little bits just to accommodate those instruments, but they work. It does sound like a full orchestra kind of playing it.
Cool.
So yeah, I love it.
Excellent.
I probably enjoy it more than just making tunes, because I need something to work off really, or somebody else to buzz off. I'm pretty useless on my own. And when you when you're doing a like a soundtrack, you are working with somebody else, aren't you? You've had no input into those visuals whatsoever, and so that's pushing you in a direction creatively.
Yeah.
And still that collaboration thing.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely. Cryss, and also Mark, have either of you had any experience of scoring to picture?
Go ahead, Mark.
Very, very little. I've done a little, not an awful lot, I have to say. It's something I always fancy doing, to be honest with you, is music to picture. And in fact, what Ben was saying there about how the music can totally change the context of a scene. There's a great video on YouTube, and I used to show it to kids when I was working in education, and it's a 2-minute scene from Pirates of the Caribbean, but they repeat the same scene 3 times with entirely different music behind it. And it totally illustrates that point that Ben's just saying. It completely changes the meaning of that scene, just the type of music behind it.
Yeah.
So it Ben's 100. And by the way, Ben, just like to say, obviously the quality I'm hearing here is not great, because you get the usual bandwidth phasing and everything. But from what I can hear, it's sounding really good. Well done.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Cool. Cryss, how about you? Have you dabbled?
Yeah, no, not in scoring. My work has been in other areas, although interesting enough, I did some acting in some low budget movies when I was in my early 20s. But one of the things that struck me is like so I'm always finding these like horrible, awful, low budget sci-fi to watch, because I just love sci-fi and we run out. Like, want to find something to watch. So I'm always interested in the scoring of it, and what they're doing with the sound. And my wife probably gets upset with me, shaking my fist about things. But well, one thing is like getting to listen to the clip that Ben sent over. Like I was just really impressed, because I've watched a lot of these movies with people who've done a lot more composing than you have been, and I was like, man, he's following the scene. The changes are good. They're keeping sometimes like the lull in the scene, keeping it interesting just by that character and music, and just like what Mark was saying about how much music can change a scene is quite interesting.
Yeah.
My wife and I have been talking about kind of the change. She loves John Williams and the classic Star Wars orchestral. And we have conversation about it because we're hearing a lot more of electronic things going on in film scores. I'm sure that, obviously like John Carpenter and stuff was doing that before, but having some of the name just slipped my mind. The guy with all the modulars and
you mean Junkie XL?
Junkie XL.
Yes, Junkie XL, yeah. That kind of soundtrack. It's kind of interesting to see how that's changed movie making, but yeah.
And doesn't his name from Nine Inch Nails now? Trent Reznor.
Yeah.
Him and his forget the name of the other guy. They do a lot of electronic soundtracks now, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
What's happened to me quite a few times is I've ended up with music in sort of film projects, but it's worked backwards, whereas I've done a piece of music and somebody's then came and said to me, Mark, can we use your music for the video? So for example, a few years ago I wrote this sort of Celtic piece, being Scottish and all. So I wrote, and I played the electronic wind instrument for the sort of flute.
Oh yeah.
So it's dead simple, like C major pentatonic scale, dead simple. But it turned out quite nice. And this gentleman got in touch with me and he said, Mark, I've made this video and it's done with a drone, and it's all landscape of Scotland. He says, "Can I use your music?" I said, "Yeah, go ahead." And he came back and said to me, he says, "Matt, the whole thing sounds great, but see when your music's turned off, the drone footage looks like nothing, but it's the whole experience of the visuals and the music together."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff. I mean, it's the industry that I work in. We develop training material mostly, and we use music, albeit mostly this copyright free, royalty free stuff. They keep saying that I should maybe compose something, but I don't really want to jinx it. But the balance of picture and sound is very important, but also the amount of information you can convey to the viewer using all forms of auditory inputs. So the visual, the audible, and of course in other things you can maybe go a bit further. But the fact that you can get twice the amount of information across using sound and picture, whether you're teaching somebody how to do something or whether you're conveying an emotion in a film, like you say, you can have a scene that completely changes meaning just because the music is different. It's powerful stuff. The only thing I've ever done is I've written music for a stage play. I got commissioned to do something for a bit of Shakespeare. They wanted to do a modern sort of twist on Shakespeare, so I had to write some music for the Bubble Bubble Toil and Trouble. So I had the script to go on, which I kind of remembered from school. And that was it. I had no picture. I had no idea. I didn't get a chance to go and see them rehearsing. So I had to write this piece of kind of sinister electronic music with a rhythmic beat that they could chant their, the incantation that they speak to. And I got invited to the opening night. I'd never seen it done, and I was really quite impressed that it worked. They'd managed to fit it in, but that's all I could ever lay claim to. So let's get back to Marc now, because he's our special guest. So we're going to talk to you, Marc, now about two separate things. First of all, your sound design, because you've got the website marcbarnessounds.com, but also your live performance stuff that you do with your wife and elsewhere. So let me just bring up. So this is your website, marcbarnessounds.com. 30% off everything at the moment, guys and gals. So there's loads of stuff here.
That'll continue.
Okay,
all
cool.
the way sort of through this lockdown.
Oh, cool. That's great. So
once everybody's able to gig and everything again, make money like the way we should, then we'll go back. But as long as this lasts, I'll keep the 30% going.
Excellent stuff. So there's some, you got some really good stuff there for Korg Mini Logs. You've got the Korg Wave State, which obviously the new stuff. Performance classics for the Roland AX Edge, and they're all incredibly well priced. So tell us about your sound design. How do you go about creating patches? What's the inspiration? Do you come up with I want to create some pad sounds or some bass sounds or some lead sounds and then do that, or do you just create something and think, oh, I'll stick that in the pad bucket for now?
Sometimes yes. Sometimes what you're saying, I just sort of mess about and see what inspires me, especially on the wave state, because there's so much there. Sometimes you're better just sort of taking a journey and diving in and experimenting, loading a few multi-samples in and changing them and seeing if you can come up with something. And to be fair, that's what I like about the wave step. But sometimes as well, there is times where it's like, I want to create a sound that's like this, and then obviously that's a different sort of process. That's then listening and think, I think the foundations of that sound is a pulse width modulation or something like that, and then working that way as well. To be honest with you, obviously the sort of delving in and just having a blank slate of creativity and starting, that's more enjoyable.
Yeah.
But obviously with the live work and things like that, there is needs where I need a sound that's like that sound in that track to play at the gigs and things like that as well.
So you've done stuff for the Minilog and the Wave State. Have you got anything else coming in that you're doing stuff for?
Well, I'm doing one more bank just now on the Wave State. That'll take me probably about a couple of weeks to finish off. And then I've got a Minilog XD Facebook group that's mine. I'm admin on it, and I promised them that if we got to 200 members, I would give them another 10 free patches. Cool. And then suddenly over the lockdown, it's just sort of shut up. And
that'll teach you.
So once I finish my Wave State bank, I'm then going to do 10 for free for the Minilog XD for my Facebook group members, and then hopefully by the time that's probably maybe about 3 weeks a month, there's apparently the Roland AX Edge is going to be Zencore compatible soon, and hopefully they've got this update, and then I'll do another performance bank for the AX Edge. Obviously the AX Edge is a very different instrument. It's designed to be played live, so the sort of types of sounds you tend to program and things like that on are different. But I'm waiting patiently in this upgrade that they've said is coming, and it's coming to the AX Edge. So
cool, excellent stuff. And so the other side of your musical career is the live stuff. And whilst you were there, I was paying attention. Managed to find your website for Angel Star. So this is your live music project. Obviously, you've been affected by what's been going on in the world at the moment. So I can't say how's it going, because it's probably going pretty badly. But up until the point that we all got forced to stay indoors, how are things going? Is this a lucrative?
Yeah, really well, to be honest with you. It's playing people's weddings and things like that. The wedding industry, well, up until very recently, was doing very well in Scotland here particularly, and especially the last sort of 10, 12 years, there's a lot of work in Scotland, and well-paid work in Scotland for working bands to play at people's weddings. And it's been really good. We've been doing roughly about 40 weddings a year for the past sort of 10 years. Obviously, just now it's stopped, but what's happened as a result of it all stopping is all the people that have booked us for weddings that haven't been able to go ahead, all but one, I've been able to reschedule them for 2021.
Oh, that's good news.
So when we get to 2021, we're going to be super busy, because basically we're going to have all of 2020's weddings and all of 2021's weddings on 2021. And if it doesn't kill me, I might see 2022 at the end. But no, it's good fun. You meet all different kind of people. You're part of a couple's most important day of their life.
Yeah,
it's a big honour. I'll be honest, it's a lot of pressure. Okay, it's not like doing a gig in a pub or something like that, where you show up and have a few pints and nobody really cares. It's a lot of pressure. The people are putting a lot of trust in you and your product that deliver. But it's something we all really enjoy, and I'm very lucky because I do it together with my wife and my best friend. So it's three of us in the band, and it's myself, my wife, and my best friend, and can't really ask for much more than that. That's pretty much what you want when you're going out doing something. Like, you can totally rely on everybody around about you.
Cool. So what we normally do is we ask our guests some questions. I'll kick off, and then Ben and Cryss, I'm sure we'll have something for you. The question I have is when you're playing out live, what's your rig that you use? What's the technology that you use? How much gear do you take? Are you using laptops? That kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Okay. I'm using the computer because I could have showed you a couple. But so obviously I'm the only player in the band. Okay, so we're using a backing track, which more often than not I've created in the studio here.
Right.
So we're using a backing track, but there's parts missing in the backing track that I play live. So at a live gig, I bring the Kurzweil piano, which is behind me here. I've got the AX Edge, which is out of view, and I've got a Roland FA06, which I have to say is getting used less and less now for the live, but it's the only piece of equipment that's still in the van. I've not took it out the van since the lockdown started. But I just use the FA06 for sometimes if say I've got an electric piano on the Kurzweil and I want to add a brass stabber while I'm playing. I've got it sitting in the top, and I've got the guitar where I play all the guitar solos and stuff like that, because there's no guitarist in the band.
Sure.
So and just for the record and anybody watching, I'm not claiming for a minute that any guitar playing replicates a good guitarist.
Unless your name's Jan Hammer.
Yeah, or whatever. But it's not really about that. It's a case of we've got a format. There's three of us in the band. There's 3 seats in the band, and I need to work a way between the 3 of us to do the best we can. In an ideal world, yes, we'd have a 13 or 14 piece band on the stage, and it'd be wonderful. But it's just not going to happen. So that's what I take live. All goes through this mixer that's behind me here. It's a Yamaha 01V96i. We've got a 6 kilowatt PA system that we carry about in a big van that's out the drive, and the batteries run dead in it now because it hasn't been getting run. But that's basically it. And then obviously the singers have their mics and their in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got a little speaker I use for backline. I don't fancy the idea of in-ear monitors.
How spontaneous? Can't even say the word. How spontaneous can you be in a gig? I mean, I guess you have a set list, and I guess that the wedding party will have made some requests and given some instructions. Right. But I many years ago used to play in a band, and we had synthesizers, but they were played manually. There was no sequencing or anything like that. So we had the freedom that if we wanted to throw another 4 bars in, 8 bars in, if we found that a particular song was really hitting the spot, we could extend it or do whatever. Do you have that ability? Have you got any kind of flexibility in your
okay
rig?
So obviously the one thing you do miss not having a full live band there is that what you just described. So do you know what, if somebody's playing a really good solo or something, let's extend it on another 8 bars or something to keep it going. Okay. So obviously you can't do that when you're working to a backing track. But what I do sometimes is sometimes, and I use the FA06 for this, is sometimes if a song's going really, really well, let's say it's a dance track or something that's going really well at the wedding, is I'll quick simply sequence on the fly, like the main 4-bar groove of the song or something into the FL6, and then when the backing track finishes, start running it and play a solo live, and or the singers do some ad libs or something like that, or sometimes even the backing track finishes and I just sit down at the piano and would play piano and vocals.
Oh, right, okay.
Things like
Cool.
that.
So you have some degree of flexibility there.
And with regards to what you said about the set list, so we don't go to a gig with a fixed set list. Okay, it's just not some. The only songs that are pre-arranged is usually the first 3 dances maximum of the wedding, and then whatever we play will depend on the reaction of the previous song. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what we'll never do is we'll never go with a list of 50 songs and we're starting at song 1. So after we've done all the bridal party songs and that, we'll test the water with certain kinds of. We'll say this is working. We'll do more of this. Or people are getting fed up with this style of music. Let's drop in a rock track, something different.
It's a fine art, isn't it?
Drop in. It's experience. To be honest with you, I mean, when I was younger, I could never get it right. Do you know what I mean? The band was good, but see this whole reading what's right for your audience. It's something you only learn with experience, and it's the same if you're DJing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when the band takes a break, I jump onto the DJ decks and I do a DJ set.
Okay.
So at no point of the night are the people left without any music.
Yeah.
Because what was happening was people were booking us for their wedding, and then they would come to me and say, How long's the band's break? And I'd say the band takes 45 minutes of a break. I says, and you're having your buffet anyway. I don't think it's really right that the band's playing while people are eating. We're not a dinner music band. And then they would say, all right, fair enough. And then they'd go and hire a DJ and pay a DJ £300 or £400 to do a DJ set during our break. And I said, no, people are not doing that. I says, I'll do the DJ set. Because I just thought, they're paying us enough money, right? The band needs to have a break. You can't do 4 hours straight through without a break. The band needs to have a break, but I didn't want people having to pay extra on top of what they're paying us. So I started doing DJing.
Yeah, well, that's we always used to have either a mini disc or a CD or something that when we had our break, we just popped that on, and it was just a set of tracks that we kind of mixed together. But it never took into account the feeling in the room at the time, but it did the trick. It gave us.
What else it's also handy for is you'll have been here yourself in a band. Somebody will come up and ask you for a song you don't know and you have no idea how to play, and it happens. I don't care what anybody says. It happens to every musician, every working musician. Somebody will ask you for a song and you'll have no idea what key it's in, what it even goes like, and you just say, sorry, don't know that song, but I'll get the DJ to play it during the break.
Yeah,
and it gets you off. It gets you off the hook now. And nowadays the DJ systems are all linked to Spotify and whatever, so you can get anything.
Yeah. We used to have a guy that followed us around. This was back in the 80s, who would always, about 3/4 of the way through the show, say, "Play some John Lennon." And we'd say, we don't know any. And so eventually we learned some. And it wasn't until, I don't know, a few months after I joined the band that I was told that this was the lead singer's father. He was always pestering this lead singer to sing John Lennon. And when you said, no, we do some Beatles stuff, but not John Lennon solo stuff. And in the end, we had to, we worked out Imagine or something, I don't know, some piece of crap. But yeah, it was a bloody lead singer's father. Chris, how about you? Have you got any questions for our guest?
I've got a couple of questions, but we'll start with one from Simon on the board there. He says, is the WaveState a future live keyboard or solely studio?
Right. Okay. That's a very good question. Okay. And I bought it with a view of this will be a great instrument for me to design patches on, sell, and put slick sounds in my studio productions. Now I have it, and I've heard the way it actually sounds, and also when I've got it midied up to my 88-note keyboard, and I hear how massive the thing sounds, I'm itching at the bit. Sorry, I'll be a bit too. I'm desperate for Korg to bring out either a 61 or 76 key that it can come to the gigs, because it sounds fantastic. That's just that. So I think to answer the question, I think if Korg bring out a 61 key version, it could very easily be a live instrument.
So I've got two questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you use a keytar a lot. I think you have the Roland, what's it called, the Axe?
The Axe Edge. See if you just give me a minute, I'll bring it into camera.
He's back.
So this is it here.
So it seems like that's a great tool for the stage, because the audience can, you keyboardists have an instrument that's a little bit obscured from the audience versus, say, a guitar or bass or drums. Mm-hmm. And so I can see why that's used and how that would be a very fun thing. What has been the reception from other keyboard players to that format, because you use it so much?
To be honest with you, in the main, people are quite supportive of what I'm doing. I mean, you always get the odd person that sort of looks down their nose a bit at you because you play an instrument like this, and people that say, I believe real keyboard playing should be done sitting down and things like that. But to be honest with you, I've been playing these guitars since I was 16. So to be honest with you, as long as the audience in front of me at the gig is enjoying it, I couldn't really care less what anybody else has to say about it. I mean, it's at the end of the day, I mean, it's sort of like, I get people that say, for example, to me, I'm going to be critical when I hear your band, and I'm like, well, be critical all you want, because I really don't care. I says the only time I'm going to care and listen to people's criticism is when people are not willing to book us. If I'm sitting with an empty diary with no gigs in it, right, which obviously that's the case just now, but that's different. But under normal circumstances, if I'm sitting with a healthy looking diary, we're all obviously doing something right, or people wouldn't book us. So that's sort of but I know where you're coming from, and there is a bit of, because it's a keytar is a bit of an instrument where people sort of take the mick a bit, and that's fine. In fact, when I got this and I made my unboxing video, I shared it on Facebook, and I didn't expect it totally blew up on Facebook, and people sort of poking fun at first, which was fine. They weren't being nasty, but they were poking fun. But I'd quite a few come back to me and say, do you know what, Mark? I'm never going to take the mick out of a guitar again now that I've heard the way you can play it. So that felt really good.
I don't get the whole guitar hate thing. I really don't.
It's kind of a sad thing, and I know guitarists have played a big part of that. Maybe they're worse than the synthesis in that regard, but I think, with like what you just said, like once someone hears you play, if they're one of those critical musicians, they gotta just shut up after that because you're so dang good.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, sorry. On you go. On you go. On you go.
So, second question for you. So, thinking about, a lot of, I watch all your videos. I personally am a big fan of yours, and I have told you that on many occasions, and have enjoyed it. And, there's been some videos come up where you've done some very guitar-like things, and of course, this format plays into that. And so, one of the ones I was thinking about that I had enjoyed is you had done a video playing Brian May's solo from Bohemian Rhapsody, and you did quite a good job on that. So, thinking about the connection between guitars and keyboards, or guitarists and keyboardists, I remember thinking back when I was listening to Jeff Beck albums and the work he did with Jan Hammer, and then to hear how they would play off each other, to hear how they influenced each other, both really positively. Mm-hmm. What have you taken away from the guitar world that you kind of added into your system?
Okay, so when I was very young, I mean, like sort of 3 or 4 years old, my brothers were older than me. Okay, so I was like 4 years old. My oldest brother was 16. My brother left to do an apprenticeship in Germany, and he come back home with all these heavy rock records. So I constantly, all my sort of early childhood, heard AC/DC and Deep Purple and UFO, which incidentally is one of my favourite guitarists, played with UFO, Michael Schenker. Absolutely love his playing. So by the time I got to sort of 8 years old, right, you had a young child that wanted to be a rock guitarist, right? Because all I heard was all this wonderful guitar music, and my dad was a great musician. He sort of intervened and he said, "You're not learning to play the guitar just now." He says, "We've got an organ in the house." He says, "You learn to play the organ." He says, "And then see later on, if you want to learn to play guitar, you can learn to play guitar." And and to be fair, he told me the reason at that young age why he wanted me to learn the organ, and it sort of stood by me till now. He said to me, he said, "Mark, see if you learn to play the organ," he says, "you're learning to play the bass notes, you're learning to play the chords, and you're learning to play the melody, all in one go." And actually, even although playing the organ's hardly the sort of coolest thing you could be doing nowadays, right, I actually think it's made a big difference to me now, because I've had that background. See, now when I produce music and I'm actually doing my own bass parts and doing all the different sections, that foundation, learning to play the organ, did actually do that. So it was organ for me. And then when I was old enough to gig, I sort of stuck with organ. I'd done all my exams at school and things like that on the organ. And when I was old enough to gig, my brother also played keyboards, so we had 2 keyboard players in the band. And we had a singer-guitarist at the time, but he had to leave the band, and the new singer they brought in only sang, he didn't play guitar. So then that was when my brother bought me my first guitar. Because I said, look, I think I'd be able to play some of these solos, because the thing was, the guitarist that we had, he was a great rhythm player, but he wasn't good at playing leads and solos. And I was like, I think I could play them quite close on the keyboard. And my brother's like, no, you can't. I said, well, leave it with me. So that, like, the first ever song I learned to play on using a keyboard guitar sound was "Wonderful Tonight." So I learned to play that, and I made a cassette tape recording of it. Now, at the same time, this guitarist was giving me a little bit of guitar lessons, not much. I could play like a few chords, and I made a tape recording of me playing this "Wonderful Tonight," and I put it on. That was actually my dad put it on for him to hear, and he was like, "Is that Mark playing the guitar? He can play that well already." my dad's like, "No, that's the keyboard." So that's how, and so ever since then, it's whenever there's a guitar solo in a song we're playing live or whatever, I just learn it to the best of my ability. I mean, obviously, there's things you can do on a guitar that even with the aid of technology you can't do on a keyboard, but I think I can do a reasonable enough job of it that the average person in an audience is going to be happy enough with it, if you get.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you've done that with many instruments. I mean, with the saxophone and other wind instruments too. Yeah. That's great. Awesome, man.
Cool. Ben, so you have an affinity with the live performance aspect of what Mark does. Got any questions for him?
I could relate to a lot of what Mark was saying there about gigging. Must feel strange at the minute without it. If you're out every weekend, it's just a complete culture shock, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. There's also the fact, Ben, that the other gentleman in my band, he's my best friend, but he's like my brother.
Yeah.
And I don't get to see him. He's like a member of our family, and we don't see each other as well.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about your sound programming, because that's I'm always fascinated with the likes of yourself, where you can just keep going programming these banks of sounds. How do you get inspiration for that? Are you trying to recreate something that you've heard somewhere else? Are you being forced down a certain route with the synth? What's going on?
Being totally honest, it's a bit of all those things. It's not one particular thing. And to be honest with you, this morning I sort of woke up and I was like, I think I'm experiencing sound designer's block for the first time. Writer's block, because bear in mind, I've only been sound designing for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Before that, it was a case of presets, banks of other people, tweak the sounds a little to fit in with what I'm doing. So the whole sound creation thing I've only been doing for about 3 years, and I said, I think I'm experiencing sound designer's block.
Yeah.
But what I did was I came and I sat down and I started experimenting with programming a wave sequence and randomizing it and building round about that, and then that gave me ideas to go on and then make a 4-layer patch for the new bank. So in that case, it was really the synth that really. But other times there will be a track comes on the radio, we're out driving, or my wife says, "Do you remember that track from years ago? The one she said from me was Enigma."
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Enigma.
Yeah.
So my wife and I were about 15, 16 years old when they had their big hit, and it was good memory. Put it on, and I was can't actually believe how good some of the sounds are in that and the production. So I might hear something that might inspire me to try and do something similar.
And when you're programming like on the fly, as it were, where you haven't really got an idea, this sounds like a daft question. I appreciate that, but there is a reason for me asking it. How do you know when to stop? If you haven't got a goal, how do you know when you're there? So
on the wave state, that's a very good question, because you can do so much on it. And at the start with the wave state, it was a bit like, oh God, I have to have 64 steps because it can do 64 steps, and I have to have at least 6 modulations and stuff. Yeah. But now what I sort of do is I sort of look upon the 4 layers as a mini track. So I'm using my experience of studio production to put together a patch for the waves. So that helps me. On other instruments like the Minilog XD, well, the limitations of the synthesizer tell you when to stop. Which by the way is fine, because the Minilog XD's a fantastic little synth. Yeah. Even though it's limited, you can get really, really nice sounds out it very, very quickly, and it's so immediate, and it does everything you expect it to do to the sound, and it's really, really nice. It's got beautiful effects in it as well. That the limitations, but on here, the when to stop part, that's a very good point, Ben, because you can really go so daft with this that it ends up just a mass of noise and nonsense, right? Which you need to be careful of. And like what I've seen some people doing is some people have just like, look, I'm sticking to one layer at a time. And I understand why they're sticking to one layer at a time, so that they don't fall into that trap. But for me, the 4 layers, it's sort of like painting a picture, and it's getting all the textures in the four layers that make it sound nice and big and full. I personally like rich, big and full sounds. That's what I like. I like that feeling when you play the keyboard and you hit a chord and you're like, whoa, that's get balls, that sound. That's what I like.
I'm with you there.
Excellent stuff. Well, if you want to know more about Marc, you can find his 2 websites. They are Marc Bark, giving you a new name here, Marc Barnes sounds.com for the synth patches. Let's just bring that up. marcbarnesounds.com, and then if you are in Scotland or maybe even further afield and willing to pay the petrol, when everybody's out of lockdown, and I was listening, but I was just seeing something popped up on my news feed on my phone here in the UK. Old Boris has said that things are slightly going to get relaxed from Wednesday. I don't know the details, but we won't do politics on the show.
No, we won't, especially when the Scottish government is disagreeing with them.
Well, I'm all on the side of the Scottish government at the moment in that regard. But when you do, if you are getting married and you're in the Scotland area, angelstaronline.com is where you can find out more about that. So thanks ever so much for those insights into your work. Let's move on to the last couple of topics for the show. So this is the next one. I don't know, I've been trying to scoot behind you there, Marc. I don't see one in the background. But Akai have just released MPC 2.8, which is a firmware update for the MPC X, MPC Live and MPC-1. And this is introducing a whole host of really cool features, including MIDI multi-capability. They're talking about 32 MIDI devices that can be hung off the back of one of these devices, and treated as an individual instrument within the MPC itself. I must admit, it is looking very, very good. And this is a long overview video, but just to kind of give you a brief look as to what's going on. You can hang lots of different instruments off the back of your MPC Live, for example, here, or the MPC-1 as they're showing. Multi-track, do all sorts of wonderful things. So I'm not a prolific MPC user. I worked on MPCs from a sound design perspective many years ago, doing libraries for MPC 1000, 500, and what was the big one? 5000. I've always liked them, but I've never really got my head around them. It just doesn't seem to fit the way that I make music. But this seems to be getting a lot of traction in the doorless jamming world, where they see this as a real central point that is not a computer, except it kind of is a computer, because it's I believe these run Windows, or a version of Windows, or Linux, or something inside them. I'm not entirely sure. I do remember them talking about doing a Windows, embedded Windows thing, but I think it might be Linux. But yeah, this seems to be like a really, really interesting thing. Anybody MPC owners here?
Yeah, it's not my world.
Right. What I've got to say on this, Robbie, right? I've never been interested in MPCs. It's like totally. I've been the same as you. It's not my world, right? But since actually watching this video of this update, I have to say I'm seriously tempted, right? And I totally see the appeal of it. I mean, if you think about it, I'm sure all three of you will agree the most frustrating things when you're working in music come through using a computer. All the time. I mean, this morning my guitarist bit round straight onto video. Mark, I've got problems. Logic's not recording my guitar right. And I'm like, okay, so if you get the input set up, you got everything all set. He says, Mark, I'm sure it's all set up right. I says, okay. I says, do us a favour, close down that project, open up a blank session, set up the guitar the way you'd normally set it up to record and see what happens. Messages me back in 2 or 3 minutes from there. It's recording better, but it's all phasing, and I don't have a phaser effect on it. And I'm like, I says, that's really weird. I says, do me a favour. Completely reset all your computer, turn it off for about a minute or something, then restart it. He done that and everything's working perfect. Again, like there's no explanation. And he said, how did you know that? I says, because the same thing happened to me about 2 weeks ago. Things went, I couldn't work. I spent about 2 hours trying to fix what was wrong. And I said, I'm going to need to sleep in this. I went to my bed and I got up the next morning, turned the gear on, and everything was working perfect. Again, and it's things like this that make using a computer to make music unenjoyable. I mean, it's like sound design on a software plugin. It's a laborious experience, whereas when you've got a synth in front of you and you're making, and like I totally see the appeal of this MPC thing. Like I totally get it. I don't think I'll personally go down the road, and the reason why I won't go down the MPC route is because I've invested so much money in universal audio and stuff like that. That's really, really important, especially for recording vocals and singing and doing the mixes of the singing, all that. So, but I'm thinking, do you know what? Maybe the cheaper one of them all is at the Live. That's
I think so.
That maybe be quite nice to actually just set up here just to control stuff to do a jamming here. Although it'd be a luxury item.
It's interesting that the MPC, you know, when I was messing around with them, they were very popular, and then when Akai Japan crapped out, and we then got Akai, you know, the US, you know, the company, what they called now In Audio, I think that is the umbrella company that own Akai and Newmark and Alesis, and it was Jack O'Donnell that bought them all up for a bargain price. They seemed to just kind of go down the controller route, and it just used to be controllers that you just plugged into something else that made the sounds. And you know, this is the last one that I still have it. I kind of reluctant to get rid of it, the MPC 500, mainly because you can put batteries in it and it's completely portable. So I maxed out the RAM in it, and you know, I still have it. But my big problem with it is that I like to see detail. So I understand Mark's argument about computers being a pain in the arse, which they are, but also you try sequencing on something that's got a screen that big, that, you know, it's just too.
And the other thing about using the computer, I mean, obviously I was quite hard on the computer, but I couldn't see myself doing without it in the same breath.
And I
see the automation.
Yeah. Exactly.
The automation, the detail of automation you can do in a computer now is like just absolutely like to the nearest millisecond. You can make that change in the music. And I mean, I don't know an awful lot about the MPC, but I doubt you'll be able to do stuff to that level of detail.
Yeah. Well, the thing is now with the new MPCs, we've now got decent sized, colourful screens, as you can see. In the video there, and even with the big one, which is the MPC X, you know, that has, just wait for that to come up, you know, that had a really large tiltable screen, you know, LCD
in this video,
screen.
We're going to take a close look at the newest
everything
flagship
looks,
model,
you know, really nice, and it was
MPC
kind
line.
of, you know, that was the
Akai
sort of thing we were
Professional.
looking or hoping for many years from Akai's and their MPCs. You know, I had a play. I tend to use them as they were originally intended, as a drum machine, and I know so many people who simply have them as a drum machine and don't have them for anything else. Peter Gabriel has one, always has one, kind of on the go, just as a drum machine. Mark King from Level 42 was always, you know, using one of these in his studio, still does to this day. But on the other hand, when you see what some of the producers from the hip hop and R&B genres are coming up with this thing, you know, they clearly get it and do some amazing stuff with it. So to now be able to hang so many external instruments, and in this world where we're now moving into, or have moved into, an area where there's lots of you know, modular and doorless setups, you can see something like this having a real appeal.
Absolutely.
Cryss, Ben, are you any of you MPC users or have any opinions on the new firmware?
Go ahead.
I've never used a real MPC. I've got like the virtual one on my iPad, and where I was funny that you should mention the drum machine thing, because I was looking for a drum machine solution. It's something that's always bugged me. I've had 1,000,001 things trying to solve my drum problem, and it was a real toss-up between the analog rhythm Electron and one of the MPCs. You know, the newer MPCs.
Yeah.
And I decided that I didn't just want samples. I wanted some analog gubbins going on as well, and that was the only reason I went down the Electron route. But now that they're talking about bringing all these machines in, I do like the idea of that. I like the idea of breaking away from the computer because, like in the old, I used to have a Yamaha QX1 sequencer. That's all I used to use, and even though that was only, I think it was only 2 lines of text on the display, you got the hang of it in the end, even cutting and pasting stuff and dropping it about everywhere that it was possible. But I think that you focus on the process more because the machine isn't too much of a distraction. Like the computer is quite distracting sometimes.
Yeah.
But things like that symphonic orchestra, you're never going to get that to run on an MPC, are you? So
Nope.
I suppose it depends what you're doing. Maybe if I do want to try and get things going in a bit of a like jam kind of session, then the MPC is an ideal candidate for that, and quite interesting.
It's horses for courses, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But Ben, I could see, for example, your live act. I could see the likes of that being very beneficial to you because your music's pretty much all synth driven, and you can have all these synths connected up live, and it would mean that rather than like what I do, have it all in a stereo backing track, you can like adjust the mix and stuff to suit the acoustics of your venue and stuff. Stuff like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd be more hassle, more setup time, more everything, but it would maybe be worth it because then the whole thing would be running from the same MPC. You'd have all your synths, and I think like visually that'd be great as well.
Well, you could use some of those MIDI channels to send stuff out to lights and whatever, couldn't you? It doesn't all have to be synths, so it would be an ideal solution for that.
I mean, looking at this is the MPC X, which is kind of the all singing, all dancing. You know, I remember when I was working with Akai and they'd come up with the MPC 5000, which kind of blended the synth stuff from the Alesis Fusion workstation along with MPC sensibilities. So it had an analog or virtual analog synth built in. So you kind of had this thing where you are now sampling as well as being able to plug a MIDI keyboard controller in and play chords and bass lines and lead lines. And then you look at this, the screen on that was just this. It was a monochrome LCD affair, which was, I don't know, that's so big. And then you look at what this one has got. Full color tiltable LCD with this kind of grid pattern on, and this would have made a lot more sense to me back then. But it's nice to actually see Akai building MPCs that are MPCs that are not just controllers, because that's where they went. And was it Native Instruments and Machine just stormed the industry in terms of the genres that the MPC was massive in. Everybody kind of went to Native Instruments and Machine and went from there. But I've always got an affinity. I have a soft spot for Akai. They were always very good to me, and I like what I see, but it's just not me. Cryss, do you dabble? Have you dabbled?
Yeah, no, drum machines here and there. I just prefer to use computer, Logic. I like working in it and having everything where I can see it, and then I use my hardware gear with it. But I try to stay away from having a lot of little boxes everywhere. I tend to work better if I can go really deep on one thing rather than have things spread out. I just, for my own workflow, it seems to work a little bit better. I mean, I appreciate it, and I enjoy, I've watched some documentaries on things like, the sampler and how that affected, say, rap music or, trip hop or things like that, how those led to different types of music or creative processes. But it doesn't tend to work, at least as of yet, for me as well. So I tend to prefer to do things on the computer. So if it's drums, I'm using Easy Drummer 2, or if I'm using virtual instruments, then I like being able to visually access the instrument. I think, Robbie, you had made this point about versus going through menus on a small screen versus being able to see the whole picture at once. That's largely where I would be. And of course, computers, they have their problems. I think you guys would, like people in your area would recognize it better, because not that many people out here would get it. But for a while, my parents and have some neighbors also that I help out with computer issues. And my poor parents are just not very good at it. And they won't learn, they won't listen to what I say, like, what do you do this? So they'd start calling. And a friend had turned me on to the IT crowd. And so they just got used to calling me up and hearing back. And so I'd say back to them, turning it off and then on again. So once they hear Irish accent, they, oh no, I'll call you back. Okay, good.
Yeah,
see in that one, Chris, to be fair, I remember when I first taught my mum how to use a computer, and to be fair, my mum, she's in her 70s, but she's actually pretty good on the computer. Like, she does her Facebook, and my mum's German, and she knows how to write in German on the computer and get all the German letters when she's writing in German, right? But see when I first taught her to use the computer, I was explaining to her, so there's the mouse and there's the pointer, and you move the mouse. She was like scared to touch the mouse. like it was almost like she thought it was a real mouse, like a living, and she was like
so I've got this story when I used to train in classrooms, which obviously don't do so much anymore. We had I used to work for a company that wrote the software for the UK criminal justice system. So if you ever got arrested and sent to a magistrate's court, you were being processed through our system. And so I used to have to go into the courts and teach the court staff how to use the software. And you'd think, court staff, it's a pretty, intense environment, lots of stuff going on, and cases, coming in and going out, and there's all sorts of, types of people in there. They'd be switched on and intelligent. And so I was there in the classroom, and I was showing them, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but I said, and so yes, all you need to do is, using a mouse, click on the screen, click the OK button. And so everyone was going, clicking, and was going through. And this one woman, I couldn't really see because she was in the back corner of the room, and she was struggling, and I could hear this kind of tapping sound. So I went over there and I said, is everything okay? She goes, yeah, but nothing's happening when I tap the mouse on the screen. So yeah, there are people that struggle with the concept of using that stuff. But the MPC has just been. I was just bringing this up. This is a film that talks about Jay Diller and how he used the MPC itself. Has there been a musical tool? Because that's really what the MPC is. I wouldn't say it's so much an instrument as it's a tool that has almost completely and utterly defined whole genres of music. I mean, yeah, the guitar is all about rock and roll to start with, but it's used elsewhere. But the MPC is so kind of, if you pick up an MPC and say, what kind of music do I make? 99.9% of people are going to say hip hop or R&B. It's just so ingrained in that genre. It's I always find that quite interesting. Maybe it's just me.
I was thinking about other gear that I have. I've got a few pedal boards. My big pedal board's like, I don't know, 4.5 feet long or something. It's huge. And I go, I got all these boxes and they all do different things. And I was thinking, well, why is it that I'm so into that? And I've got some Eurorack stuff, but I don't use it as much as I probably should. But why is it that the kind of DAW-less jam setup just doesn't work for me? I'm not really that interested in it, because and that's not to say that I don't like that, because I watch that stuff all the time. See somebody like Inky who's got tons of lot of boxes everywhere, and she's making it orchestrating in everything, and it's all going on. I go, why have I not been able to get that to work for me, or why does that not really fit for me? And I was thinking, I was like, well, with these things, it's a lot of the same, I guess. It's a lot of different boxes, but and maybe it's something I've just been using them for so long, but I always am kind of getting concerned, and I've noticed this even with the Eurorack stuff. So there's some things that are very basic, and you go and everything is on the screen, and then you have some other things like the Forum S Swan that you got to remember combinations and this, and you got to do this, and you got to press this button and move this knob and that kind of thing. And that's one thing that's really kind of put me off a lot of these little boxes. One of the boxes that looks really cool and that I think has a lot of interesting sounds, and it's not expensive and it's not too deep or anything, but I keep kind of questioning, do you want to add this to what you have, would be the modal cycles. Mm-hmm. I have the sample version and then the cycles, and it looks like a really cool box, and I've heard some very cool demos, but it's one of those things, and certainly the MPC would be a lot more of that. Like, well, man, I'm gonna have to really learn how to master this instrument to really get my money out of it and be able to use it right. And I just don't have the time to be able to give to that when I've got all these other things that I'm trying to master.
Yeah.
I can totally sort of agree with that. Yeah. I get that totally, Chris. You can end up in a situation where you've got so many bits lying about that you just can't possibly learn to get the best out of any of it.
No.
It's much better to master 2 instruments than have no knowledge of 100, isn't it? It's the way it is.
Well, that's me out of it then.
One of the things too is like the wave state. So I've got the wave station plugin, and I like that. And I really have enjoyed some of the wave state sounds, and particularly the ones that Mark's making. And I seriously thought, like, it's a different style of, it's a different workflow. I just don't have the energy to get into that. Like, I've got my buddy's Prophet, and that's not doing anything different. Like, it's the same thing, just a little bit different sound. This, like, man, I don't. But at least these days, I mean, for something like that, and it's something that I considered. Like, I really like this little wave state thing. Maybe I would get that in the future, like pick up one use for cheap, and then I would just get Mark's sounds for it. Like, I'm not going to learn. I'm not even going to bother.
See on that point you made there, it's actually quite a good point. I felt that I needed something different in my journey with synthesis. Because you know yourself, all these either analog synths or analog modeling synths, it's the same basic principle. Once you know your way around the synth, it's the same things you do on each one, whether you're making a bass in the chord mini log or you're using this Moog behind you. It's the same basic principles. Okay, there's little quirks and different things you can do in different synths, but I felt I really was ready for something completely off the wall different, that was completely different to all the synths I had, and that's how I went for the wave state.
You always got to make those decisions. So for me, I went with the Moog 1. It's like, this is amazing. I'm going to own this, and I'm going to master it, and that's going to be a thing that I spend the most time with out of anything, and it still is. Yeah, so I see that, and the wave state is so interesting because, I mean, it can do the classic things, but with those sequencing lanes, and some of the things, the pentatonic vocal patch, it just like so many cool, interesting sounds in it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just that's what I like. There's so many avenues on it, and now to be honest with you, if I'm doing a track in the studio, right, and I need a fat bass sound, I won't use the wave state for it. I'll use one of these guys here, right? The Erebus or the Moog grandmother for it. But there's so many avenues of creativity, and that's where I felt I needed to go within my budget. I mean, obviously, everyone would like to have a Moog one. But by the way, your stuff you do in the Moog one sounds great, Cryss. I absolutely love it, especially when you're going down the Vangelis route. I just love anything to do with Vangelis. Love it.
Excellent. Well, there you go. That's the MPC 2.8 firmware is, I believe, out now. So if you have the X, the Live, or the One, then you should get some great benefits from having a play with that. And I believe it's all completely free for existing users. So one last thing to squeeze this in, because this piqued my interest for a number of reasons. So I'm a big fan of the band Soulwax, who some may or may not be familiar with. They've gone under a number of different names and guises over the years. Too Many DJs is one. The Flying Duale Brothers is another. But Soulwax is the kind of the band entity of these two guys, David and Stephen Duale, who come from Ghent in Belgium. And it was in that city that the university had a Synthi 100 unit, and they decided to make an entire album using just the Synthi 100, which is a beast, as we all know. And of course has recently been, I wouldn't say cloned, but inspired the creation of the Analog Solutions Colossus, which is another massive room-filling piece of equipment. And so it says $37.50 here, but that's the pre-tax price. It actually is £45 for this package. What you get is the album on vinyl, plus a 48-page book exploring the background of the album and the history of the synth. It's all housed in a fully artworked inner sleeve with perforated patch bay outer sleeve and a clear bag, forward by the brothers themselves. Lots of excellent photography, and then this six movement, should I say, album that everything is done on the Synthi 100. And as a fan of Soulwax, and as a fan of synthesis, and a fan of vinyl as well, this really got my juices flowing, as they say. So it looks really interesting. Just made me wonder how many other bands have done entire albums with just one instrument. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Just one instrument, nothing else.
Was there any just Fairlight albums?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. I mean, there was so David Vorhaus, who was part of the band White Noise, who had their album Electric Storm, their kind of seminal British electronic act in the late 60s. He went on to do library music for a label called KPM, which was a big library music label. In fact, some of his compositions that he made on the Fairlight are still being used in documentaries and movies today. And he did a couple of albums which were, I believe, almost exclusively Fairlight, but that's I guess that's cheating in a way, because the Fairlight could do everything to a point. But I imagine that the Synthi 100 must be very difficult to achieve. I mean, I'll try and play the demo, see if we can do this without
copyright strike.
Actually, yeah. Now you say that, I'm not going to do that, because we did. Do you know? I told you we got stung by Genesis, because I played a tiny clip of that Genesis live concert just to show, and I was talking all the way through it, just to show Tony Banks's massive keyboard rig.
So it's all computer automated.
I know, and
it's not as if like Genesis's management.
Oh no!
There, so I watch and say it's all computer.
Well, you say that. Who was I talking to the other day? Oh, that's it. I was talking to somebody who works in the advertising industry that uses music, and he said, yeah, it's the algorithms pick up. It's a bit like Shazam. You hold your phone up to a speaker for a few seconds, and it knows exactly, the version, the band, the remix, whatever it might be. But there are companies, there are labels, and publishers that do manually strike, and it's bizarre stuff.
I've got a good one to tell you now.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I decided, it's not my usual genre, but I always quite liked it. I decided to do a piano house track, and I used vocals done by Angie Brown, who sang with Bizarre Inc., she's a smashing singer. So, done the track, put it up on YouTube, wasn't thinking any of the next thing. Angie absolutely loved it. Record labels loved it because it could be signed, blah, blah, blah. So I said, I agreed to it. So now I signed the track, and now the labels made a copyright claim against my YouTube video.
Oh, that's mental.
For my own... it's my own song, basically, because even though it was done with samples of Angie Brown singing, but basically I cut up all the samples and basically created my own melody out of her samples.
I've heard of that before.
My song, and they've got a copyright claim against.
I've heard of that, of labels making copyright claims on their own material. It's just bizarre, but we fell foul of it at work the other week when we bought a piece of music, licensed it, put it on the thing, and then the composer puts a copyright claim on and monetizes our video. And our corporate policy is that we don't have adverts on our videos. So now we've got this advert on there and we can't get rid of it. We're trying to dispute it, but it's a real pain. But anyway, back to the Synthi 100. Yeah.
Talking about the albums made with just one instrument.
Yeah.
One thing over on KVR, they do a regular one synth song.
Yep.
So I think right now it's the full bucket tri-synth that the everything, drums and all that. And then one album that I thought of would be this.
Of course.
That was the one. That was the exact one I was thinking of. Yeah. The back album. And the look,
We when I was working for Hollow Sun, they produced I forget which I think it was Nebulae and it was basically a massive sample library of the Yamaha FS1R with a few other bits layered in there just to get it was lots of big airy pads and all that kind of stuff. And I said to Steve, I said we'll do it. Me and my friend Mickey will do a demo track. And he said, "Do you think you could do just this library, nothing else?" I said, "Well, that's a bit difficult." No, I tell you, it wasn't Nebulae. It was the Nova chord, the Hammond Nova chord, which is this 1930s divide down oscillator, massive behemoth thing. That's what it was. And we managed to do an entire track using Nova chord samples. And we just, for the drums, we just filtered the shit out of stuff and managed to get something that sounded like a kick and something that sounded like a hi-hat or a snare. And we did the whole thing with just Nova chord samples, but it was just samples. It wasn't the actual instrument itself. So we had the ability to mess around. But yeah, so there you go. Soulwax, new album, comes out on the 29th of May. Pre-orders now. If you got them pre-orders in before the 7th of May, you'll get it on the release date. After now, it's coming early June. I guess that's just a knock-on effect of production facilities. But yeah, I've got a massive soft spot for those guys. I actually got stuck in San Francisco in the VIP lounge of British Airways at San Francisco Airport with both of the brothers and could not summon the courage to go over there and tell them how massive they were to me. Some of their albums, like Much Against Everyone's Advice, you must listen to that album. And if you're into really electronic stuff, then their recent stuff is just amazing. But there you go. Right. Well, that's 10:30. We're 2 hours and 20 minutes. I think we've done a show's worth there, don't you? Let's just go around the room and say goodbye and find out what's happening. So we'll come to our guest first, as always. Mark, thanks for coming. And anything fantastic or interesting you've got lined up for the coming week?
Okay, if you don't mind, I'd just like to answer one of the questions.
Of course.
In the chat room. It's actually directed at Ben, but I noticed it, so I'll answer it. I asked it, said, how do cover bands manage to be okay on YouTube? So,
of course.
So basically, once you post a cover version on YouTube, the original writers never will make a claim against it, and they'll put ads on it, and the original writers will make the money off it. That's how it works. So you can leave your cover version on YouTube, which suits me fine, because I don't have cover versions on YouTube to make money through YouTube. It's for people to book us gigs, and the original writers getting their piece of the cake, if you like. So I think that's quite fair. Okay.
Yeah, so, it does seem to be the fair way of doing it, doesn't it?
I just thought I'd answer. I can't pronounce the name.
Sure.
Can't see it well enough on my phone.
So anything interesting coming up? So you say you're going to work on some more Wave State stuff?
I've done 8 out of 20 for the next bank, another 12 patches, and my daughter's doing a little sort of EP, and a lot of it is like tunes and lyrics she's written over some of my synth jams,
cool.
which is really nice. And so we're going to work ahead in that. We're going to try some social distancing performances with split screens and things like that, and see how that works out. A few Facebook lives. My wife Cheryl has got quite a lot coming up. She's got a track that she recorded for Alex Morph, who's quite a well-known trance DJ. She had a release in January with him. She's got another release coming in June, and then another release with a different trance DJ in July. So she's got basically like a release a month coming up, and I have to do a piano version of the trance track. So that's another thing I do quite a lot of. See a lot of these sort of dance songs and things like that, as I strip them right back into a piano ballad version of them. That's one thing I'm quite well known at doing. So
cool. Alex
was like, get Mark to do a candlelight version. He's a candlelight man.
Excellent.
So I've got that. So there's plenty to be done. Good. And obviously keep up with anything. I'm not seeing any gear that I'm totally gassing for at the moment. Okay. I've seen a few things. I'm like, maybe, but I'm not seeing anything that I'm like, I have to have that just now. But probably it's a good time that I'm feeling like that.
Save the pennies.
Save the pennies, because nobody knows what the future holds.
Indeed. Well, it's been great having you on, Mark. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
It's been brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Great
for
to
having
have
me.
you. I'm sure we'll get you on again soon. Cryss, how's the week shaping up for you?
Oh, pretty normally. You know, it's been a lot of like behind the scenes type stuff for me right now. So my YouTube channel hasn't had much content on it, but I've been kind of getting stuff ready for the summer, basically. So I have a partner with Synthient Sound, and he does a lot of more of the graphic work and behind the scenes stuff, website, all that kind of stuff. Not the crappy graphic stuff that I do on the YouTube channel. He's the one with the visual talent stuff there. But Yeah, so it's kind of been a bummer because I don't get to interact with people as much, except for here on the weekends, and on the ProSynth network. But yeah, just getting that stuff done. And it's been fun with the Prophet 6. And that, yeah, at first, and if anybody has Prophet 6 out there, so something that I had found with my OB6 is that at times it would just sound a little bit harsh. And so I'm thinking, well, I think a lot about gain staging, especially coming from guitar. And so I found some ways to really, warm up the OB6. And so when I got the Prophet, which was lent to me by a friend, and I lent to my Juno, I was kind of disappointed with it because I expected to be, within the ballpark of the OB6. And I was, oh, man, I went through the presets, just one night watching TV and I'll just play it. Like, man, this thing is thin and kind of harsh sounding. It's just like, there's something that's grating on me about it. And I was like, I wonder if the tricks that I use for the OB6 will work on there. And sure enough, I'm like, well, I'm really liking the results. And then I started doing some reading, and there was a guy named James Meeker on Gearsluts forum who did some huge write-ups about the Prophet 6 and gain staging. It was exact same stuff that I have found on here, except he did a lot more work and about it, like experimenting. And that really opened that synthesizer up. And so now having things gain stage correctly, there's just this beautiful silky character to it. It's different than the OV6, and I thought when I had that first couple of days that I had, I'm like, boy, this is going to be a long 100 presets. And I've really found quite the opposite, that now that I have it working the way that I want to, like I'm just kind of flying through it. Man, I'm getting stuff done really easy, and it's some really impressive sounds in there. So that was kind of a fun discovery for me. So yeah, a lot more of that for me this week.
Excellent stuff. And Ben, how about you?
Just more of the same for me, I think. I'm going to finish off discovering things with Discover and box off my soundtrack once and for all. I think Electro 80s have got a couple of live cover versions planned where we all play our parts, overdubbing, and then it comes together for a video editing thing at the end. But we're gonna do a couple of covers, but not ones that we could do live. So it's something a bit different, So they probably won't be 80s, but we might put an 80s slant on it.
Yeah.
See if we can kind of produce it that way.
Brilliant.
And that should keep me pretty busy this week, really.
Yeah. Good stuff. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks ever so much for your input today. So that about wraps it up. I think for
Robbie.
Myself, the thing of which I cannot speak is still something of which I cannot speak. But we are slowly kind of getting towards. I did something this week just gone that's added to that, so we're building up content, which is really good, and that was a whole heap of fun. Got to do a bit of editing, and hopefully that will be part of this thing that I really must be very careful of not saying anything about. So as soon as that does, you'll not hear the last of it. Other than that, no. Oh, you see that MPK 49 at the back there? So that was an old Akai controller that I had for years, and it just sat in the box. And when my son expressed this interest in music technology, I said, okay, well, we'll set you up with a computer, and I'll give you, lend you a controller. And we've got kittens. We've had kittens for the last few weeks, and just in the last week, we've allowed them up into the rest of the house, and they came upstairs. And this morning, I literally woke up this morning about 9:30, and I hear the kids running around with the kittens, and then I hear this massive clunk. And my son, who's 14 years old, used some language that I wish he wouldn't use at home. And I said, what the hell's going on? He said, Milo has just knocked the keyboard off the stand. And when he said that, I'm thinking, he was in here, and he's knocked one of those off the stand. And I was like, turns out he knocked the controller off. And I said, all right, what's the damage? And the wife comes in, she says, well, one of the keys is like this at the moment. and they said they should all be like this, but this one's like, and it was the lower C had the key return peg had just snapped off because it's plastic, not like these good old fashioned ones where they're all metal. Luckily, it fell out on the floor, and I was able to super glue it back in. So that's all been fixed now, and it's just setting. So,
I've done that many of the time.
Yeah,
super glued.
Well, I've got this Arturia Keylab 61 here, which Arturia very kindly gave me, and now I know why they gave it to me for free. Is because it's shit, and the key return pegs will literally break off without you even playing them, because I will come in the room and a key will be just poking up, and I was like, how did that happen? And so I spoke to Arturia, and they said, oh well, you can send it back, or blah blah, or you can buy another one. And I said, well, I could, but it's okay, I've got others. And then I spoke to Ken Pierce, Ken Flux Pierce, and he said, because he'd spoken to Glenn Darcy, he'd had the same problem, and apparently the first run of these keyboards had an absolutely crap keybed in them, and they changed them sort of halfway through the production run, and I've got one of the crap ones because they gave it to me as a review thing, so I have to be really careful with that one. But yeah, they're horrible. Super glue, always good. In actual fact, I sometimes want to just go off and break them all off and then super glue them back together, because I know that'll be stronger than the original. But there we go. Anyway, so that's been Pro Synth Network Live episode 6, Sunday 10th of May. Thanks ever so much to everybody in the chat room for watching and for all your input. It is so appreciated. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, ding the bell to make sure you get notified. Come and follow us and join us on Facebook. And you'll find us just by searching Pro Synth Network in there. Come and join the gang, and it's a nice little community we've got going there. Thanks to Mark, thank you to Ben, and thank you to Chris for all your input this evening. We'll hopefully see you same time, same place next week. Bye bye.